two pieces of advice that I can give. The first one is when someone is trying to compare you to somebody else, celebrate the other person. In the sense that if I would say, like, for example, I would receive articles sometimes saying that, oh, this guy is only 16 years old and he's already created an app that has 1 billion downloads, or this guy at only 23 created the next big, tech startup in Estonia or something. And I'd be like, okay, that's good for them. They have a vision, they have a goal, they have something that they're working towards, and it's making an impact in the field, in the areas that they care about. These are not the areas I necessarily care about. What am I? The thing is that I am still making an impact in the areas that I care about, and because of that, I should be proud of my accomplishments, while not necessarily putting myself down for not doing something in an area that I don't necessarily I'm too ambitious in. So in that sense, then I would get this a lot. And the thing is that over time, the more you sort of deflect the fact that it doesn't really bother you and doesn't really motivate you, people sort of leave you alone. So in a sense that people will tell me, oh, this guy did this or that guy did that, I'd be like, that's great for them. I'm doing this, I'm focusing on my own thing. And people will be like, at some point, people will be like, okay, he's not going to get into this. He's not going to really be the next like tech millionaire or whatever. But at the same time, like I'm still making an impact where I care about, so I'm satisfied with that for myself.
Welcome to We Need to Talk, where we try to figure out how to find fulfillment in life and reduce dissatisfaction. Listen to this full episode if you'd like to hear excellent advice on how to handle the pressure of expectations. Or, for example, when your parents are comparing you to other students or other adolescents, essentially. Furthermore, we discuss why some cultures put a greater pressure on students to achieve, for example, academic excellence than other cultures. And it has to do potentially with the history of the culture in regards to whether it experienced more of a collectivist background or more of an individualistic background. So enjoy the episode and don't forget to subscribe. Let's go. Welcome everybody to We Need to Talk. This channel is dedicated to trying to figure out how to find fulfillment in life and reduce dissatisfaction. My name is Henry, the host of this channel, and today we're joined with DJ. DJ, do you want to shortly introduce yourself and tell the listener anything you think is important to know about yourself?
Yeah. So, hi, my name is Dheeraj, actually, or DJ, as most people tend to call me. I am 21 from Mauritius in the Philippines, and I graduated my bachelor in international business administration this year. And currently, I'm looking for opportunities in marketing. So, one of them being I teach marketing right now, mostly to university students as well, with Liversity. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. So if anybody has marketing opportunities,
Or
hit DJ
questions.
up or
Yeah.
questions. I'll put DJ's contacts in the below. I don't know, DJ, if you want that or not.
Yeah, sure. Just plug my LinkedIn in.
Awesome. Okay, I'll do that. So I think the first question I'd like to start off with has to revolve around some Asian cultures. Now, I've heard you or seen you talk about, well, write on WhatsApp about the pressure that some Asian cultures place on, essentially, I mean, it seems to me like all generations, or there's this pressure to perform with excellence, and whether it's academic excellence or building or creating a reputable career. Why do you think, or I mean, maybe you can talk about whether you've experienced that yourself and why that pressure exists, or what creates it, if you have any
Yeah.
ideas.
So, a little bit of context is that I come from an Indian family. Like my background is Sindhi, for those of you who know what that is. I was born in the Philippines, where I lived there for 7 years, and then I moved to Mauritius when I lived between the ages of 7 and 17. So basically, yes, I have faced that pressure as well, but then that's mainly because a little bit of background as well. Ever since I was a kid, I've always just been good at school. Like when I was in primary, I would be like number one in class without even realizing it, actually. And then that sort of carried on when I moved to Mauritius. I was doing well in school, and then up until I was about 12, 13 or so, like I would just win like best in class every year without even doing much for it. Like I would just be like, okay, yeah, and the award goes to Dheeraj every single year. And at some point, like I started feeling the pressure when I was in my early teens, like 14, 15, because around there I wasn't really too motivated to study all that much, to be honest. Mostly because I had really boring courses at high school, like biology and stuff, which I'm not really too fond of. So the thing is that there was that pressure, like, okay, I don't like my courses, but I still want to maintain my reputation and everything. So what do I do? So I just kept. So basically, every like in my school in Mauritius, from the year that I started to the year that I left, I would consistently win every single year, except for one year because I took that year off to do the Cambridge O levels, which is a separate thing altogether. So literally, just adding another academic achievement on top of your academic achievements, to the point where I actually finished school 3 days after turning 17. So July 2016. So I was very young when I was out of high school, and that had and completed achieved quite a lot as well. At some point, I had won awards for French, for IT, even like student of the year once, and nominated again a second year. So there was a lot of stuff that I've done in high school. And the thing is that like I'd always had like a really high GPA, like an A, because well, for me, the thing is that for me, like I never really put much effort into it because my school system was actually really easy. Um, and just in school in general, like even when I did the O levels, like I would just be winging it half the time. And I'm not trying to brag or anything when I say this, but the thing is that just academics just came generally quite easily to me. But the thing is that like I would always just see, no matter how much I would achieve, like I would always be like compared to by my parents, or compared, like for example, they would compare me to some guy who they know who got a laureate in his A levels, or some guy that they know who scored like a really high score, even to themselves when they were younger. For example, my dad would tell me stories of how when he was in university, the professor would tell him to just skip some classes because he already knew all the content, just show up for the exam. And sometimes it sort of feels, it's weird because like you sort of feel that okay, you've achieved so much, but at the same time your all your achievements just seem irrelevant compared to what other people have achieved. And that really puts a lot of, I feel like that's where you really feel the pressure, like because like you're like, okay, what else can I do to differentiate myself? Because the job market's so tough, this blah blah that. And I think Asian parents really put a high expectation on you just because that's something that was also provided given to them when they were younger, I think. My dad went to Ateneo Business School, so which is like the number two, I think, business school in the Philippines in his time. So, obviously really high. Like I graduated from RSM, which is one of the top 10, 15 in Europe. So just that expectation in itself is also really high. And you're always just trying to be better than your previous generation, or just trying to be better than the people around you. So I've thought a lot about this. Like, why do Asian parents compare themselves to other people? And I know this is not only just Asian, but also in places like maybe Mexico, South America, maybe even in the Balkans and stuff. And I've come to realize that this is something that exists more with collectivistic cultures. So I feel like collectivism comes because, like, the thing is that in Europe, and in North America, like countries like the Netherlands, Norway, Denmark, the United States, Canada, so on, they tend to score high on individualism. And I sort of think that that comes with a hint of privilege as well, because the more you sort of don't need your group anymore, the more individualist you'll tend to be. Whereas in places like China, India, the Philippines, there's so many people, and it's like the competition is really tough out there to get like a job, or to do like something great with your life, that it makes it even more difficult, I would say. And just also things like your social, there's a lot of social hierarchy, and because that reputation sort of determines your position in society, if that makes sense. So for example, when I was younger, I wanted to be a graphic designer. Actually, that was what I really wanted to do. And here I am in a business school, because apparently studying business gives you a better reputation than being a graphic designer, at least in your culture's eyes. So the thing is that there's a couple of expectations and stereotypes that are sort of set to specific roles that you really feel like you need to live up to.
Wow, that's actually, dude, that might be a really good answer actually, that the it has to do with the historical narrative that runs deep in the culture.
Yeah.
That so you're kind of, are you trying to say that a collectivistic culture overlooks the individuality of the singular citizens, and sort of creates these sort of established categories by which to place everybody in, and sort of limits everybody to these few categories. And you don't, do you know what I mean?
I think so. The thing is that there's a very strong preference for being like within your group and being loyal to your group, if that makes sense. I noticed this as well when I was a teenager. Like I would have to attend a lot of family dinner parties and have to always be present at family events, even though I was not necessarily interested, mostly because they were religious. So, for example, the fact that you were part of the family, you still sort of had to interact with them at events that you didn't really want to attend as well, because that way you sort of maintain your place in the social hierarchy. And yeah, I suppose that's also, if that helps answer the question a
And
little bit.
does it have to do with honor?
I think it has to do with honor in a way. Like individualistic cultures are more dignity based, whereas in Asian cultures you're more honor based. So basically, your reputation counts for a lot, your word counts for a lot, who you know counts for a lot, what you've accomplished counts for a lot as well. And basically, like in terms of like your age also plays a big factor, but that is kind of dependent on your country. So, for example, I would have arguments with some senior family members who have only completed maybe 10th grade in their time, but because they're more experienced in life, so to speak, I would not be able to argue my points because I'm still like 16, 17 at that time. Even though I may have a different opinion, I would not really allowed to say it. And so the thing is that there's a lot of focus on self-sacrifice to preserve the harmony and to preserve the group, which is quite interesting, really.
Hmm,
And I think that's
that
still something that
is.
carries with me till today, because like even in whatever group I'm in, like even though I may not be in favor of certain opinions or certain directions or certain things, I wouldn't mind self-sacrificing it as long as it doesn't really compromise with um certain deal breakers, if that makes sense. And then also like if it preserves the harmony of the group, then I'd be okay with it doing that.
Wow, that's something's. This is a really interesting trade-off, though, because which is, if I dare to say, better, like this sort of
Mm,
individualistic, where you it's more of a, well, the trade-off is what's going on is kind of the collectivistic culture, the collectivist culture. The benefit there is you preserve the well-being of the group. The downside is you sacrifice a part of your individual self. And
yeah,
then
yeah, for sure.
individualist culture, you the benefit is you get more of you're able to manifest and express more of your individual self, but the sacrifice is you have, I think, you run the risk of having sort of split, segregated groups, and the proclivity for loneliness maybe might be higher. What do you think about that?
I mean, it makes sense as well, and you sort of do see this with patterns as well. For example, in places like Korea and Singapore, like with the coronavirus as well, like you can see that because they care not only about their well-being but also the well-being of the society as a whole. That's why you see people sort of more adhering to restrictions as compared to in the Netherlands or in the UK, where people are more individualist and tend to care about themselves way more than other people. And then in a way as well, in certain countries, like you sort of have a little bit of both, which is why I think, I'm not sure if it was in the UK or in the US where they tried this, but then they sort of tested coronavirus prevention ads where they would have like yourself focused versus community focused. And I think in some cases the community focused one works better. So for example, instead of like protect yourself, like don't die, they would say like protect your elderly or something like that.
Mm,
So
mm,
it's very interesting as well.
mm. And okay, so that's really okay. This is a new building block for my map of reality.
Sure, go
I
for it.
felt, dude, we totally learned about this, in cross-cultural
Cross
management.
cultural management, yeah. That was a very eye opening course actually for me.
You think?
I would say so. I've
It,
noticed that, like in my culture, even though like it's very collectivist, I noticed that generations become more individualistic over time. And that also depends on what country you move to. So for example, let's say that you are from somebody with the exact same cultural background as me, but well, at least cultural heritage as me, but instead of moving to, let's say, the Philippines or to Mauritius, you would have moved to someplace like Canada or to like the United States, for example. Even though like we may be the same age, our parents may be the same age, we may come from the same place ancestrally, our individualism levels may be different. But
Mm.
the thing is that for me, I feel like I'm more individualistic than my dad would be. But my dad, who is still relatively more individualistic than my grandpa is, for example.
So you think as time proceeds, and depending on what your environment you're exposed to, you can mediate the collectivist versus individualist trade-off within yourself, sort of.
Of course, it also
Mhm.
depends on what you decide to, what your priorities are, of course, because some people, I know there are some people who also grew up in Mauritius as well, but they still prefer to stick to the group as compared to being more individual, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. How do you feel? What do you prefer? Which aspect?
So the thing is that it's both. The thing is that also for me, like I tend to be very loyal to people who I care about. So the thing is that if someone is on my good side, I will, it's ride or die. You know, like I am going to be with them till the very end. If someone gets on my bad side, that's it. You're out of my life. No questions asked.
Mm.
So the thing is that for me as well, I sort of feel that the in group harmony is the best, and that's something I try to promote. Like for example, right now I'm the president of the Creators Guild, so basically I'm in charge of a team of, well, we're seven of us, and what I try to encourage is I try to encourage a mixture of collectivism and individualism in the sense that it's good to have your own ideas, it's good to express your ideas, and it's good to have different opinions, but in the end I think generally speaking, like what's better for the community is more out of a priority for me, if that makes sense. So for example, if we have a meeting and then we have like, let's say five different or three or four different directions on an idea, and then we do a vote, and let's say we think that for the community the best one will be, let's say, option B or something, even though only, let's say, four or five of us agree, like if we think that it will be better for the, like, I forgot the specific term for it, but like if it's better for, if it fits the bigger picture, I think that that would be like a better option, if that makes sense. So I like to have that balance. If that, yeah,
Mm. Yeah, I think the the sweet spot is a mix of both. I mean, I remember I talked to you earlier this year, and you wanted to also do a workshop on the duality of life. You were really interested in
yes,
it, and this is an example of why duality is, or that duality is needed.
yeah. So I strongly believe in, well, the concept that one cannot exist without the other. So because of that, then individualism is nothing but a lack of collectivism, and collectivism is nothing but the lack of individualism. And just with everything in life, for example, with certain sensitive topics as well, like racial equality, with diversity in firms, um, as well. It's just a matter of understanding the other perspective and just trying to incorporate that and trying to reach a compromise to one extent or the other.
Yeah, fully agree. Life, yeah. You, I think by you could deduce theoretically, sort of intellectually, why one thing can only exist if the opposite exists. It's. I don't think we need to do it now, but it's
It's
sound.
it's a very in-depth topic, so
Yeah. So I want
but
to ask you the next question. Do you have advice for really any adolescents who feel pressured by their parents, not just adolescents from Asian cultures, but also any kind of culture? Do you have any advice for them?
yeah. Um, so the thing is that one thing I recently reflected on is I noticed that people tend to put pressure on you and sort of compare you as a sort of motivator. So it's counterintuitive, but in a sense that they would say that, oh, you know, like you only achieved like this is something that I've experienced in my past. For example, like my brother, um, he is not as, let's say, academically fast as I am, like in terms of comprehending things and everything. But what he does is that he focuses on quality rather than quantity. So, for example, let's say when our test scores would come out at the end of the month, like I would achieve like a great deal of work, and I would do extras, curriculars, and everything, and my GPA would be, let's say, like a 97%, as an example. My brother would achieve maybe like a third of what I did, but at the same time, his GPA would be 99%. So the thing is that my dad would overlook everything, and he would say, okay, sure, but you only got a 97%. Why don't you get a 99% like your brother, as an example? And basically, like, you sort of feel hurt when you hear something like this, because you sort of feel like, okay, like, is everything that I've done not good enough for you? But you sort of reflect on that and you sort of think, okay, so basically what he's trying to tell me is the fact that he would appreciate if I would get a higher grade. Maybe if it resonates with you, strive for a higher grade. For example, like, okay, sure, I'm doing all of this stuff, but why is my GPA only this like 97, even though like I could potentially get like a 98, 99 or something? Or, and it's the same thing. For example, let's say your cousin got a job doing this, or your uncle is graduated laureate, or this person went to like London School of Economics or something. Like these top like benchmarks that they set in place in front of you, what they often fail to realize is the fact that different people have different priorities. So the thing is that, let's say that I have an uncle who got into one of the best law colleges in the world. I couldn't care less about law as in as a subject that I want to study. So because of that, then like I would feel bad because like, okay, like why am I not in a really good law school as well? Because I have the potential to, but it just doesn't fit my interest. I want to focus on business, or I want to focus on marketing specifically. And because of that, if I get into like a really good marketing school, or even something that suits my expectations or requirements, that should already be good enough for me. So the thing is that I feel as well with expectations, the thing is that like two pieces of advice that I can give. The first one is when someone is trying to compare you to somebody else, celebrate the other person, in the sense that if I would say, like, for example, I would receive articles sometimes saying that, oh, this guy is only 16 years old and he's already created an app that has 1 billion downloads, or this guy at only 23 created the next big, tech startup in Estonia or something. And I'd be like, okay, that's good for them. They have a vision, they have a goal, they have something that they're working towards, and it's making an impact in the field, in the areas that they care about. These are not the areas I necessarily care about. What am I? The thing is that I am still making an impact in the areas that I care about, and because of that, I should be proud of my accomplishments, while not necessarily putting myself down for not doing something in an area that I don't necessarily I'm too ambitious in. So in that sense, then I would get this a lot. And the thing is that over time, the more you sort of deflect the fact that it doesn't really bother you and doesn't really motivate you, people sort of leave you alone. So in a sense that people will tell me, oh, this guy did this or that guy did that, I'd be like, that's great for them. I'm doing this, I'm focusing on my own thing. And people will be like, at some point, people will be like, okay, he's not going to get into this. He's not going to really be the next like tech millionaire or whatever. But at the same time, like I'm still making an impact where I care about, so I'm satisfied with that for myself.
Wait, dude, that's so interesting. So you're saying people will, try to make you aware of, let's say somebody's parents make them like the child aware that everybody else is super successful and tries to compare them to the kid to the other people. Then
Yep.
you're saying the parents are doing that in an attempt to motivate the kid.
It seems so.
Do you really think so? I've never thought of it like that.
At least recently, it sort of hit me as inspiration, because like you would say, if other people are doing it, then why can't you? That's the narrative that they're trying to express.
Are you
It
sure?
seems a bit
Yeah.
pessimistic, but that's the intention behind it.
I mean, that's a good point. The intention behind I think the fundamental intention is always a positive one. Like the parents,
Of
you would
course.
on average assume the parents want to help the kid. Doesn't matter how the help, let's say, manifests itself, the
Yeah.
intention is good. However, I do feel there is something quite negative that is conflating here, that is in the mix. So the parents are actually imposing their own insecurity on the child, because the child is a result of the parents' competence. So because the
Okay.
parents raise the kid, if the kid turns out a failure, the parents have failed, and the parents are comparing them to the other parents, and that's their game. The kid is their product, is their performance. So
Yeah.
the parents could impose that try to compare them with others as a simple insecurity, basically.
It's more of a motivator in a way. For example, like I know that this is a very common stereotype, but in Indian families, they would say, "Oh, you only got a 90%. What about the neighbor's kid who got a 95%? Why can't you be more like him?" In a sense that they're encouraging you, try it. Like you should be more like him. But the thing is that instead of just giving you the resources and actually guiding you towards doing it yourself. They are trying to sort of, I suppose it feels like they're sort of trying to guilt trip you into actually making the effort to get to where they want you to be. So they're indirectly what it is that they're communicating their expectation and just sort of leaving you in the dust to try to figure that out. But the thing is that this is a very interesting thing. I have a brother. He's about 18 right now, and we're opposites in so many ways. So the thing is that, like, for example, I was always been an overachiever since I was young. My brother has been the opposite. He's a bit of an underachiever academically in that sense. Not because he doesn't really, not because he's not smart. He's brilliant, but he just chooses to express it in a different way. So the thing is that, like, generally we sort of have this like general societal expectation that, like, okay, you have a kid, he should be good at academics, he should be good at this, extracurriculars, go to a top business school, top law school, top economic school, whatever, get a good job, marry, have kids, have a good house, have a car. It never ends. The expectations continue onwards. Like, at some point when you get 70, other people, other grandparents will, like your friends who are now grandparents, will look at you and we're going to be like, oh, you don't have grandkids yet, I'm playing with my grandkids like 5 times a day. So the expectations never end. The thing is that I've known some people, what they do is that they just try to, like, brush off expectations, like it doesn't bother them. And that sort of helps in a way. It's really hard to do. And I think this is more of a personality thing. But my brother, for example, he doesn't care about my parents' expectations all that much. My parents have given up on trying to motivate him in that sense. And he sort of manifests his intelligence in a different way. So, for example, he's good at, like, art. So he does things like sculpting and other things like that. Or he reads a lot. Like, he really reads a lot, for example. So it doesn't exactly fit the norm of what's expected in society, but at the same time, he's okay with it.
Okay. That's awesome that your brother can do that. I feel that a lot of people are not able to do it or really struggle with it, because I feel the problem that's occurring is, if you tell somebody, don't compare yourself to others, don't let the expectations of your parents, of society, crush you if you're not able to fulfill the expectation. The problem is, it's so difficult to let go of that, because you're not convinced that your own value is worth nurturing and you should be playing your own game. And that's why the expectations of others get to you, because you're not convinced about that. Do you know what I mean?
I think I do. The thing is that it's, once again, societal expectations. Like, certainly, in society we sort of have these, like, this hierarchy as well for what's considered successful and what's considered not successful. So, for example, like, if you're like a CEO, you have like a big house, big car, you're successful. If you are someone who teaches painting in their garage, you're not successful. That's the sort of expectation that you have. But what if the person who paints in their garage and teaches that for a living is more fulfilled in life than the CEO? This thing isn't taken into account.
Well, that would be awesome. However, the painting teacher in their garage, it would only be a good outcome for them if they were able to let go of the expectation. Because the thing that occurs, I think, very frequently is that painting teacher might actually be fulfilled, however, deep down still be insecure that they're not accepted by society and that they're not validated. It's super difficult to transcend that expectation and just say, you know what, I genuinely don't care what you think. I think that's quite difficult.
It is a difficult stage at first, but the thing is that, generally speaking, like, once you achieve success in whatever field that you're involved in, people start backing off at some point. So basically, like, if you say that I want to be a graphic designer in my case, or if you want to say I want to be a painter who teaches painting in my garage, once you sort of reach like a threshold, for example, if you can be self-sufficient, that's the basic minimum. People are going to be more okay with your choices.
Mm,
And then from there, it's a lot easier for you as well to sort of, like, like, you don't have that much pressure from external sources. Internally speaking, yes, but the thing is that, internally speaking, it really depends. Like, if you find fulfillment in doing what you do, for example, right now with the guild, I think that's the most fulfilling thing that I'm doing right now, even though it's not paying me anything.
mm-hmm.
But surely you still, I mean, you don't need to answer this question, but you feel probably insecure that you're not, I mean, not insecure, but there's something inside of you that still feels a bit of tension, and that you're not at, I don't know, like London Business School, or you haven't transferred to London School of Economics or something, you know? Or does it not get to you at all?
I never wanted to go to university in the first place. Honest confession there.
Uh-huh.
I've I haven't really told this many people, but I'm gonna say it again. I don't really care about societal expectations anymore. I'm past that point. But no, because like after so many disappointments, you're just like, okay, like at some point I gotta stop caring about disappointing people because that's gonna be inevitable. Inevitable. Anyway, so the thing is that I still graduated at RSM. RSM is a top 15 business school in the world, and or top 20 business school in the world. And to be honest, I'm fine with that. There are 8 billion people on this planet. The fact that I could even be here and graduate from here is already in itself a huge deal. You know, like some guy probably just like shoving coal into a train at some point in Nigeria would, you know, the fact that he would want to be here as an example is already just like a very big difference if you compare yourself to somebody in a less fortunate position. Obviously, given the fact that academically I've been quite good in high school, sure, I could have achieved more. Like, I could have gone to London School of Economics, I could have gone to University of Toronto, I could have gone to maybe even like Oxford or something if I had just given more effort and in my A levels, for example. But and the thing is that, like, once again, not trying to brag, but also just trying to like be more self-aware about like what I'm actually capable of. The
Hmm.
thing is that there are people who have made a big name for themselves out of nothing. You often hear these like rags to riches stories. How, for example, Modi in India, who started off as a tea vendor to become like the prime minister, as an example. So you often hear these like rags to riches stories, and then you often hear these riches to rags stories, where people who have started off with very successful businesses have sort of gone to zero, or have even gone in debt to the point where they had to declare bankruptcy. So in the end, it really doesn't matter what your qualifications, well, your background is rather, but it all depends on what you can do with what you have. So in my personal experience, like with the guild right now, like I've shown you this actually just before the interview. Like, we've done so much in such a short period of time, and we have the opportunity to do so much more and make such a huge impact. And the thing is that that's just basically because of the capabilities of our team. Are we going to be running like galleries in like Paris, like near the Louvre or something? I don't know. Maybe one day. But the thing is that, like, I know for a fact that right now there is a lot that I can do, and that's where I want to put it to use, where I can make an impact.
Dude, that's awesome. Honestly, that you've reached that level of inner conviction that I don't care, and I'm gonna do what I want. That's quite mature, and I think honestly quite rare at our age. So yeah,
Thank
that's
you.
all.
There is some pressure though to be able to get a job. So if anybody knows someone who wants to hire me at this point of time, that would be super nice. My
Uh-huh.
LinkedIn is in the description. But I suppose once I'm financially stable in that sense, like I can afford like rent, food, and everything more easily than I can do now, then then that would just be like, that just gives me the opportunity to just involve myself in projects where I can make an impact. And I think that's what I find fulfilling, and that's what I care about. I don't really want to make like a lot of, well, I mean, like, the thing is that, like, initially used to care about becoming rich one day, maybe like being like in a position where I can get like an SUV, like a nice house and everything. After a while, you sort of realize that being fulfilled is way more important than being rich. And being rich will sort of tackle a couple of fulfillments, like it will tackle, for example, like the desire to travel, your desire to but buy whatever you want whenever you want and everything. But there's also a lot of downsides that come to really being rich, especially given the cultural background that I'm in. It's not something I really value more so than fulfillment these days.
Hmm. Dude, you're really speaking to me because I'm at a point in my life like very where I need to make a decision, a kind of a bit of a trade-off between fulfillment and financial security, I would say. So it's very admirable, your perspective and your confidence in knowing that fulfillment is worth more than riches. So that's awesome. And I
Yeah.
think honestly,
If I may ask, what where do you find fulfillment?